Hello, I'm Dr. Peter Leitner, co-founder of Citizens for National Security and its research director. It's from this perspective that I speak with you today about a particularly insidious threat to our personal freedoms, such as that to think and speak freely, that define that rare and wonderful concept that we call the American way of life. These freedoms are guaranteed to us by our Constitution and Bill of Rights. However, they are under direct assault from an insidious terrorist network that has established itself within the United States, controlled by the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood has founded and works under the cover of several prominent Muslim organizations in America, including the Muslim Students Association, the North American Islamic Trust, the Islamic Society of North America, the Islamic Circle of North America, and the Muslim American Society, among many others. According to a captured document introduced into evidence by the FBI in the largest terrorism financing trial in history, the Brotherhood's work in America is a grand jihad in eliminating and destroying Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands so that Allah's religion is victorious over all religions. One of the flagship organizations in this insidious long-term plot is the Council on American-Islamic Relations, CAIR. CAIR's direct lineage stems from two of the most infamous Palestinian Muslim Brotherhood terrorist organizations, Hamas and the Islamic Association for Palestine.
You recently came out with a list of terrorist organizations. Two of them raised some eyebrows, as you can imagine, in Washington. CAIR, Council on American-Muslim Relations, and Muslim American Society.
Our threshold is quite low when we talk about extremism. We cannot accept incitement or funding when we look at some of these organizations.
CAIR is perhaps the most cynical of the Muslim Brotherhood operatives in the United States, as it masquerades as a civil rights organization. Based on its actions, one of CAIR's main objectives is to shut down any individual or company that has a negative view of Islam, speaks out against Islamic terrorism, or reveals the truth about CAIR. Rather than arguing its position in the free marketplace of ideas, CAIR regularly engages in strong-arm tactics to stifle free speech on any Islam-related subjects. In fact, immediately after the election of Donald Trump to be the 45th President of the United States, Hussam Aylosh, the director of CAIR's Los Angeles chapter, angrily issued a message stating, "The people want to bring down the regime." As Dr. Daniel Pipes described this action, Aylosh unambiguously and directly called for the overthrow of the U.S. government. The reality of CAIR and CAIR Canada is radically different from the image it tries to project. Its true nature, as an integral part of the larger jihadist movement, was most clearly expressed in the following graphic as part of the ongoing 9/11 lawsuit filed in federal court by the family of John P. O'Neill, the former head of FBI's New York Counterterrorism Field Office, who was killed in the collapse of the South Tower of the World Trade Center.
Jihad in Islam is a legitimate concept, which is self-defense. It's like, if a foreign army invades the U.S., we all, defend ourselves, and we have a standing army.
CAIR is a purveyor of disinformation and name-calling, casting the contrived label of Islamophobe on individuals and organizations in repeated attempts to either silence critics of their subversive agenda or to extort money from corporations under the threat of baseless lawsuits and product boycotts. In addition, CAIR's relentless assault upon the American Constitution and Bill of Rights is aimed at reducing the effectiveness of law enforcement and security officials by injecting fear and self-doubt into their ability to recognize potential terrorists or subversive threats. Let me give you just a few examples of what I'm talking about. Juan Williams was fired from his longtime position as an analyst for NPR after CAIR attacked him for saying, "When I get on a plane, I got to tell you, if I see people who are in Muslim garb and I think, they are identifying themselves first and foremost as Muslims, I get worried. I get nervous." CAIR also led a vicious and bizarre campaign against Nike, claiming that the logo on a new model of tennis shoe they introduced looks something like the word Allah. This absolutely absurd claim was accompanied by a threat to start a worldwide boycott of Nike products until they gave in to CAIR's demands. destroy some 38,000 pairs of shoes, issue an apology, and donate tens of thousands of dollars to the most radical mosque in America, Dar el-Hijra in Virginia, where two of the 9/11 hijackers, plus the traitorous Anwar al-Awlaki and the Fort Hood shooter, Nidal Hassan, all worked or worshipped. In another of a great many instances, CAIR attempted to intimidate the U.S. Border Patrol from scrutinizing American Muslims who attended a 3-day Reviving the Islamic Spirit conference in Toronto, Canada, as they re-entered the United States. CAIR's lawsuit charged that such scrutiny violated Muslim civil rights and rights to practice their religion. DHS countered by stating that the checks were essential, as the conference showcased radical Islamic speakers who were banned from the U.S. and who espouse anti-Western and violent practices against their enemies, as well as the fact that the conference was used to mask illegal travel by terrorists. The case was eventually dismissed by the judge in its entirety. In researching such blatant attacks by CAIR, Citizens for National Security initially found almost 150 such cases. They were described in our first book on CAIR's use of lawfare and intimidation. Many view this book as essential reading in understanding the modus operandi of one of the leading subversive organizations operating on our soil in American history. In it, you clearly see what CAIR really is and what it represents, how they undermine U.S. national security procedures, attack innocent American corporations, silence the media, disrupt prayer events and attack churches, intimidate authors and publishers, attempt to Islamicize the American workplace, stifle free speech, push back on the work of law enforcement agencies, and muzzle influential politicians and speakers representing non-governmental organizations. Some national security experts believe CAIR has advanced operations aimed at gaining influence in our societal and political infrastructure, and are working hard to infiltrate every aspect of society, including sensitive government positions. Through its 33 chapters, it has worked its way into federal, state, and local government agencies, law enforcement, and even our school systems.
Ibrahim Hooper, the director of CAIR, admitted to this subversive agenda when he stated, "I wouldn't want to create the impression that I wouldn't like the government of the United States to be Islamic, but I'm not going to do anything violent to promote that. I'm going to do it through education."
These satellite chapters often work together in launching closely coordinated campaigns aimed at subverting and challenging traditional constitutional principles and values.
Holy war is a Christian concept. It does not apply to Islam. Holy war is just a Christian or Western label that is being imposed on what some Muslims do.
It is difficult to identify any other organization within the United States whose leadership has been so deeply involved with criminal activity and with so many of its leaders arrested, imprisoned, or deported as CAIR. Unlike most organized criminal organizations whose goal is to make money, CAIR is engaged in criminal activity for the purpose of undermining and destroying the American political system and its foundation anchored in political and religious freedom. Did you know that the guest sign-in book at CAIR's headquarters in Washington, D.C. reveals a still unexplained absence of visitors for several weeks prior to and immediately following 9/11? Over the several years that the book covers, there was no other apparent gap of activity, nor did it coincide with any Islamic or national holidays. So what accounted for it? Prior knowledge of 9/11, perhaps? CAIR's lawfare and intimidation has continued unabated. They're regularly employing the same tactics to push back on critics. So what can we do about this tainted organization whose leadership has been so deeply affiliated with crime? As for Citizens for National Security, we're going to publish a second edition of our book, updating our initial version with the numerous cases that have taken place since its release. As for you, here's what you can do. Demand that the Muslim Brotherhood and all of its affiliates, such as CAIR, be designated as a terrorist organization. Demand that government at all levels cut ties with CAIR. Demand the criminal prosecution of CAIR. Demand the withdrawal of their tax-exempt IRS status. And demand that elected officials be held accountable. For the sake of your children and future generations to whom we will bequeath our nation, its principles and constitution, demand that your government list CAIR as well as the Muslim Brotherhood and its other progenies, as terrorist organizations. That will enable law enforcement within the United States to seize and dismantle these subversive organizations once and for all, and help preserve America as the bastion of both religious and secular freedoms our founding fathers envisioned.